So like none of this is woo woo in the sense that all of a sudden it's all soft and we're not driving excellence. No, excellence is non-negotiable. That's the difference. It's not a buzzword. It's a non-negotiable. If you don't want to perform at a level of excellence, you will not be on the team.
Hey, it's Nikki, Llewellyn Gregory, and you're on Gut Plus Science. You're in for a fast-paced, storytelling, action item-rich leadership growth experience. I hope you make this podcast a habit. I consider it a leadership mentoring tool. Learning together makes us better together, and that is how we change the world around us. Let's get to it. Hey, it's Nikki back on Gut Plus Science. I'm so excited for today. The topic is going deep around the word purpose. And we've talked so many times on Gut Plus Science about the importance of intentionality, purpose, and making impact from that intentional or purpose-driven perspective and planning and all of that. And so, I am jazzed about this. Welcome, Jonathan Mayo. Jonathan is my guest today. Let me tell you about him a little bit. A U.S. Army veteran, an author, founder of Waymaker. Love that name, by the way, for so many reasons. Through his Strive methodology and the Jon Mayo podcast, he empowers leaders and entrepreneurs to transform obstacles into opportunities and lead with purpose. Jonathan's mission is to provoke thought, incite action, and build a world where purpose drives performance. So today, Jon and I are going to deep dive and really take this unique look, and he's going to teach us some things about how to see purpose-driven impact in a new way. And just like his intro said, I think we're going to have some action-oriented tips or ways to then go take what we're learning today and go try it. So, Jon, welcome to the show today on Gut Plus Science. We're so excited to have you here. We have a number of friends that have been so excited for you to be here. They've been asking me, like, when is that podcast going to go live? So let's kick off with, how do we as leaders define our culture? Every culture is unique, whether we're working on it or not, it's there, right? So you might as well work on it, because if you're not working on it, the culture you have is probably not all that great. How do you help leaders find their culture clarity or their own unique identity?
Well, first of all, thank you for the wonderful introduction. And I love the word that you use, jazzed, because we're going to have a lot of fun and bring a lot of energy today. And that's just part of the joy. So in direct response to your question, I think that we skipped over an assumption that or a knowledge nugget that most people aren't aware of. And that is, like, culture is not this mythical universal thing, right? And you just articulated it really well. There's not a culture that's universal. There's your culture for your organization. And like it or not, that culture is going to be a reflection of you. If you're the founder, if you're the CEO, if you're a senior leader, and the culture of your team, regardless of where you are in the organization, is a reflection of you. The same is true of your family. And then even down, if we want to get more granular, of yourself. Your own mental well-being is a reflection of yourself, and that is your personal culture. And then that drives all the way back up into the organization. So I think it really starts with that awareness, and then we can pivot and dance from there.
Yes, I love that. I love that awareness to just help us lay the foundation, understanding that there's no universal blueprint, right? I like to share the story of someone had told me their story of a next door neighbor company that won a Best Places to Work award. So they went over, were inspired, asked that CEO to share their blueprint for how they did it, to try and take that and put it in their company. And guess what? It didn't work very well, right? And so we have to understand, the uniqueness, and there's no skating around. We have to do the deep dive in the work to figure out our own way. And I love that you shared that. So let's talk about, your mentorship around how to develop that culture and scale that culture across the organization, so that the newest people that join, the senior people that join different departments and, ways of being different human beings, we are all seeing this culture the same way and really embracing that. And people can feel that vibe. How do you do that?
First and foremost, there's this idea of being a conduit, right? And it used the word mentorship. The way I look at it is I get to join in the adventure with a lot of incredible leaders and be a conduit to bring the culture, the purpose-driven impact, everything that they want intentionally created in their life, in their business, to manifestation. So like when we're actually functionally working, right? Like I'm leader A in company A. What do I do? Well, first I need to identify what I think it might be, because The first principle to this is a little bit of curiosity and what is our culture? What do we think it is? So if we just take a moment to capture that, right? It can quite literally be 15 to 20 minutes, jot down what we think it is, what the core concepts are, those types of things. And then we can look at that and say, okay, what do we want it to be? And we can jot that down next to it. And right then and there, we already have the cornerstone that's necessary to begin amplifying and solidifying that feeling, that means of being in our organization. But there is a critical next step, and that is not building in a vacuum. I'll pause though before going into that.
Well, I'm really excited to dive into that. One thing I thought, let's step back for a second. I want to know how this became something core to what you do. I also know we're going to go into the Strive methodology and learning about Waymaker and all that, but maybe help us understand, how did this become your sweet spot, what you wake up to do every day, and then lead us into the vacuum.
Yeah, thank you. That's such a fun one. So, lived experience? No. Living experience. I had the gift of being put in underperforming teams starting the military. Very quickly, they're like, hey, we're going to give you this team. Good luck. And I learned and am continuing to learn how to understand my people. And I'm a steadfast believer that the reason purpose driven impact is so important is because healthy, living, growing, breathing profitability follows people who are living purpose driven, intentional lives that in which they're empowered and growing, right? So it's like, okay, if I can learn my team and I can learn what's not working for them and why and understand that, then yeah, there may be people that need to leave because I always ask the question of, do you deserve to stay? But more often than not, it's people trying to push and force things as opposed to listen and influence, cultivate, and be a conduit to the things that are necessary. And it's so incredible because, starting the military through multiple industries now, and now having the gift of getting to work with incredible founders across industries, it's true of the human condition. That's part of this like first principles approach, like curiosity, cultivation of what is the need and how do we fill it and how do we invite people into that space. So it's really become the language that we speak, and that language shapes everything else that we do.
So good. Now I'm curious myself. They would give you the, let's say, oh, we've got a problem team. John, here you go, right? Some storyline like that. I'm I'm curious, when you went in and started asking questions of a particular team, an individual, and because of the questions you asked, you got this like, aha, like, okay, right? Give us a story of what that looked like going into this team that you're looking to turn around because you got curious, because you deep dive to understand the people. Here's what was found, and here's the story of then turning the ship, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that language. So really, I think it's founded in humility and being an avid student of life. So I think a lot of leaders, the reason I like conduit over strategic advisor or coach, whatever you want to call it, the reason I like this idea of conduit is because I'm a student. I'm a student of those I steward and I work with. And this is true of any team I've joined and of anyone I partner with. I go in without presumption or expectation of what the need is. And rather, I listen. And I quite literally will say when I join a team, like my entrance speech, right, as the senior leader is, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to allow me to serve alongside you. I am looking forward to learning from you what works and what we need to improve on. Thank you once again. Let's get to work. That's it. And from there, I actually learn from my team. And it's incredible because when I go in without presumption and I just ask questions and I have them teach me their jobs, I see very quickly who's with it, who's not, what's working, what's not. And it allows for rapid adjustments to be made. And the same is true when I'm working directly with founders. Hey, I don't know your expertise. You're the subject matter expert there. Teach me. I'm so excited to learn from you. And as I'm learning, I see the scatter plot of the levers to pull and the opportunities to help shape things to create the outcomes we want.
So good. The Strive methodology. So I talked about it in your introduction. This is a big part of how you operate. You may have mentioned some things already that are part of this methodology. Walk us through Strive methodology. Maybe give us a little history of where it came from and help us learn it.
I'll do my best. So the Strive methodology is how I operate, put to words. essentially. And it's borrowed from the military planning process. It's borrowed from the entrepreneurial operating system, from Rockefeller habits, from Simon Sinek, and a thousand other geniuses. And all that borrowed brilliance combines in a strategy actuation methodology that has intentional focus on consistent engagement over time. Because everyone's been to a speech or a conference or had a great podcast and they get excited and they want to do something and they don't. So, one of the key factors that's a differentiator is the E in Strive, which is engagement. And that's a very intentional cycle that I put to words and published a few years back as a cornerstone that I didn't want to, that I wanted to bring into reality and have be able to serve people. And what's exciting now is that's evolved into a full-fledged operating system. And we are currently beta testing an assessment to help really create clarity for folks as well in that.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's actually in testing. So it's like, it's a lot of fun, but that's what Strive does. It helps actuate strategy by grounding us in where we are, what's happening around us, where we want to go, the actions that are needed, and then keeping that a priority through intentional action and engagement over time.
And then the Waymaker ethos. So where does Waymaker intersect? Explain that.
Waymaker is everything. So if this is a hierarchy, the umbrella or the foundation, however you want to look at it, is this Waymaker ethos and lifestyle, right? I believe that like my mission is to forge Waymakers and create a world led by them. And the entire idea, so Strive goes into that. This idea of steward leadership goes into that, right? Which progresses beyond servant leadership. When, just 3 seconds on that. In servant leadership, there's a lot of value. It's a brilliant thing, but you subjugate yourself to that which you're leading. With steward leadership, you're responsible for the maximization of the return on investment of everything that's your responsibility, that which you serve, the time, the people, the environment, the resources, everything. It changes the connotation, right? Linguistics build our world. So if you want to upgrade your world, upgrade your words. And it helps to empower us. So this idea of Waymaker is that if the obstacle is the way, then we must be Waymaker because the obstacles are actually our opportunities. And if we choose to live in the gap, that tension, that space in between, then we can transform frontiers of obstacles into landscapes of opportunity. And what's more, we can equip people to do the same. So that's where this idea, this hyper intentional lifestyle, radical responsibility mindset comes in to force function us to take intentional upward aim and daily action towards it, and then have that ripple out in our leadership, our organizations, and the world.
So a Waymaker, it's a way of being. Would you agree with that? It's a way of showing up. So when you go into an organization, take us back to the example you were giving around, hey, we've got the problem challenge here for you with this team. Come on in. Do you introduce the concept of Waymaker so people understand like this is a way of being? Like I'm going to help you understand what is a Waymaker and we're all working to be this, or how does it, I guess, how do you communicate it? And is it something that is communicated out loud?
At a certain point. So I'm not a fan of preaching. I love working to be winsome. So what I mean by that is I work to model that which I want reflected. And when curiosity is stirred and questions are asked, we're off to the races. So typically, Waymaker starts coming up around 45 days in. But another thing that I'm a huge believer in is state your intent. Don't assume people will get it. So I always tell folks that I'm working with, like, hey, I'm going to repeat myself a lot until you're making fun of me for the things I'm saying. And then I wait. And when people start making fun of me, I applaud them. I'm like, yes, we're getting it. Like, good. And now I know I can repeat something else until you make fun of me there. And that's part of that game. And at a certain point, once credibility and trust is built, that's when I think I typically find that conversations start happening around Waymaker, because otherwise I'm just another new guy with ideas who doesn't matter. So that's where it goes back to being that student and learning and waiting for the ground to be cultivated to have those conversations.
So far, I'm familiar with the Waymaker terminology. There's a lot of different components in my background that this word makes a lot of sense, but I don't want to take us off track with all of those stories right now. But what I do know is a Waymaker, I think you said it, removes obstacles, I think clears a path, path forward, trailblazing this forward. I think of connecting to purpose and a lot of what we're, talking about today, title of the episode. On my team, I found a tool called the YOS, the Y operating system that helps me understand my why, my how, my what, and my team's why, how, and what for each individual. We use it every day, week. Strengths, Scallop Clifton strengths. We use it all the time. I mean, we have a chart. We use it in conversations when things are challenging. We're trying to figure out who can step in and solve a problem. This is a language for us. It helps us understand each other, find the right fits, things like that. When you're operating as a waymaker, you're leading people to purpose. Are there certain tools that you've found to help you better understand outside of asking questions and being curious? Are there certain tools that you like that help you with this?
Absolutely. So now I implement the Strive operating system everywhere I go, especially like if I'm in a direct leadership position. But going back to these tools, like I'm a huge fan of predictive index. I'm becoming a massive fan of something called the success genome. And there's a lot of fun there and it pulls from a lot of cool things. But there's this strong thread in our conversation around the power of having shared language, which by the way is the foundation of a shared culture, right? So like it's so important that those things are interlaced. But for myself, it's like, hey, here's the expectations, right? We have to get clear on what we can agree on early. So here is our meeting structure moving forward. It's minimal, it's hyper intentional, it's structured, but here it is. Anything else we'll handle in this way, right? And we just define some behaviors that we can all agree on very early, very minimal. And we hold to those relentlessly. And that allows that foundation, right? In addition, like as I'm seeking information, to create some order and structure that allows us to begin to shape the environment. So relying on those agreed upon behaviors early on, minimal, and they grow over time and they take shape unique to that organization as well. It's not a square into a round hole type of thing. And then learning and adapting as you go is what I rely on. And the conduit method really allows me to be highly adaptable, which is, I think, important because where I see most folks get in trouble is presumption of what the solution is. That's where, okay, let's agree upon some shared ground and then I'm going to learn. And we're going to go from there, sometimes very aggressively and surprisingly fast. And sometimes we'll take our time. It depends on what we're facing. But not having presumptions is so important.
Such a good reminder. And, even though I know that, sometimes just the reminder brings me to, I did that yesterday. Dang it. You know what I mean? You got to keep your awareness there, or the repeating things a lot. It was making me think, what are the things right now that I've sent 2 emails on? We brought it up on a team meeting, but it needs a lot more. Some of those things that just need those consistent reminders because they are so important and it just makes or breaks. You think I delivered this communication, but did it stick? And really thinking about that and doing reflection is just constant. It never stops. Like we have to always do it. So it was really good. Okay, let's story time. Tell us a story of transformation. Walk us through a team, a company that you came to help, applied Strive, brought in the Waymaker modeling, and what happened?
Yeah, I'd love to just articulate once again in applying Strive. The reason it's called a methodology and Waymakers and ethos is because it's not hammering a nail into place. I cannot overemphasize that. It is fluid and responsive, right? With curiosity to the environment in question, because it's learning. Like the entire process is about learning how to maximally steward that which we're working in. And to answer your question, well, even going back to how does one cultivate this curiosity, and we talked about that foundation document, step 2 is you sit down with your leadership team and you ask, hey, what in this resonates and what is trash? Because if you build in a vacuum, you're done. Same with the email. An email written and sent is not communication. It is an itch scratched, right? So a great example directly to your question is actually with the client earlier this week. We had our session and they were wanting to push an email with their top initiative for their organization in a fight that they're in as a team to win a big contract. So they're like, we want to push extreme ownership and we want to push these other things. And I asked the question of, okay, How effective do you think the communication of what you're pushing is? We had the response, and then we went through, okay, what does it look like to embody the things that you're wanting? And we had that conversation. And then we asked, okay, what does it look like for you to model that this is the top priority for the organization since that's what your statement is? Next thing we knew, we had a Strive meeting implemented and set up for this coming week, communicated, a second email going out saying, hey guys, after reflection, I realized I could better lead us through example. So here's this meeting. Here's the very clear expectations for us going into this working session. And here's what you can expect from me moving forward. And in that one conversation, we went from this feeling of needing of pushing something to understanding what the team needed and responding to it as conduits, leading by example and modeling the very things that we wanted to see. And the feedback where the first emails got very minimal responses, the second email in which that ownership and those expectations were set got a almost unanimous response within an hour. So it shows, oh yeah, people are looking, they were ignoring because the communication was ineffective. And that was both the power of both Waymaker and Strive in one in that fluid, hyper intentional moment. So that's kind of a fun one. That's front of mind.
That's good. That's good. It just made me think of this, question that I want to ask, and I've got kind of two sides to it. It's a similar thing, but go with me for a minute. Okay,
Yeah.
so we roll out a new initiative, and there are various leaders on the team, and the first two initiatives that we do, like activities to roll it out, the announcement, the team meeting, there's not much response. Okay, so that's example A. B, we do let's call it listening tour. We're being very curious. We're collecting all this information, getting feedback, and we're finding things in the feedback. There's a lot of different ideas, complaints, things like that. And there's one or two big complaints, but you don't see it anywhere else. Here's where I'm going to weave these two together. On A, so you have some leaders that are like, yeah, they're just not into this. We're not getting a response. And then over here, they're like, oh my gosh, fire drill. Did you see what so-and-so and so-and-so said? Right? How do you discern? How do you help leaders with when you keep going, right? There's times where things aren't working and they're not like, this isn't going to stick here. Not everything we try and we keep reiterating is going to necessarily stick. We got to pivot, right? And then there's other times we get all this feedback. We open the can of worms and there's some complaints. There's a couple. How do you not like, oh, we're going to attack everything? It comes up. How do you help to discern to figure out really where to focus on? Nope, nobody cares about this, or oh my gosh, fire drill. Give me your mentorship there.
I don't think it's that binary. And I think when we treat it as that binary, that's where we see our issues. If we develop the solutions from an ivory tower, which is the perception from the front line every time, regardless of what we want to say, and it doesn't matter what size the team is, if we build it in a vacuum, then it has a much higher chance of falling flat. And if we only ask occasionally for feedback from our team, then it creates this big noisy mess. So what does it look like to have both consistently as a part of who we are? Can we cultivate in our culture a shared awareness, perhaps? And what might that empower us to do? So the two things that are interesting is these initiatives seem completely disjointed from the complaints that may be valid in the analogy that you just gave. So like, what do you do? Well, I think that they're two separate things that need paid attention to differently. And there's this like idea of, oh, well, if I listen to everyone, then how are we ever going to get anything done? Well, it's like, well, what if you only get the wrong things done and you go in the wrong direction? How cool are you then? That's pretty ineffective, but your ego is probably more hurt or bruised by that sentiment. What I would propose is open up a line of communication for constructive feedback. Whining without constructive, tact is to be burned with fire. However, there takes coaching and teaching people how to be constructive. So you could create a voice of your organization type form. It can be available 24/7. And it can have a couple of constructive questions in it, right? Calibrated questions with examples of constructive responses, right? Here's the complaint. Here's my recommended solution. and it can be anonymous. And then talk about it often and praise the organization when you get feedback. That creates momentum and a compound effect across the organization to the second piece of what you discussed. And to the first, rapid, like understanding who should have a voice at the table to help understand if the initiatives that you want to roll out make sense in the first place is critical. So if you're only doing it in the C suite, you're wrong, right? It doesn't mean you have to listen to everybody because everybody doesn't have the competency to have a vote on what the strategic initiatives for your organization may well be. But you can create a strike team or a cross section for rapid, deliberate feedback and integrate that into the things that you want to roll out that can significantly help amplify the impact and buy-in of what you're doing. So that's the two things that come to mind without obviously more information of approaches, posturing that could help with those two things.
That's a solid take. Now, let's hear how you think about measuring success or measuring traction. You had mentioned EOS earlier, I think. So when I said traction, it made me think of EOS. How do you measure success? How do you track progress?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, KPIs are critical. And the thing is, they have to be aligned with the words that we're using. So if we're saying we want this type of culture and we want to create this type of impact and we want to be like this, a great example from yesterday that's really tangible. If you want people to build a more relational sales team, but you keep a KPI of 150 calls a day, dissonance, tension. So having critical, measurable metrics is absolutely important. And if I'm direct leading a team, I have daily syncs in which my stakeholders report to me where they are, if there's a gap between where they are for that day and for what they need for that day, and what they're doing to overcome that. And there's cross collaboration, everything. So like none of this is woo woo in the sense that all of a sudden it's all soft and we're not driving excellence. No, excellence is non-negotiable. That's the difference. It's not a buzzword. It's a non-negotiable. If you don't want to perform at a level of excellence, you will not be on the team. So we use those metrics, but predating that, we have to pick the metrics with extreme intentionality to ensure that they are matching the culture, the tone, and the outcome that we want to create. And once we do, we also allow ourselves to adapt as we learn and have better data. That's what comes to mind.
That's good. And then repeat what we landed on as far as like what we are measuring. So there's no confusion. We are all really clear on what excellence looks like. Such good stuff. Well, Jon, thank you so much for breaking down the Waymaker way and the Strive methodology. I feel like we could go on forever, but we did touch really well on the high points and great examples. I'd love to head over to our lightning round where we can get to know just a little bit more about the personal side of you. I think this is going to be really fun. One question we always ask is if you had to pick one book to share that you would recommend because it changed your life. It was a book from a long time ago or a recent read. What is that book and why?
Okay, that book's going to be A More Beautiful Question. And the reason why is because it's how I define my life's purpose, pulling on the threads of question to find a beautiful one I could pursue forever. It's how I approach everything I do, from leading teams to raising my boys to enhancing my own life. And I think it's created more freedom than any other singular book I've read.
Ooh, buying that book on Amazon today. Thank you for that. I hear you have a nickname, a fun one. What's the nickname and where did it come from?
There's two, which is a bit of a zinger. One is Sauce, because my last name is Mayo and people thought that was fun. The second one, though, which I'm fond of, is Smiley. And that was derived in jujitsu, actually, when I was a white belt and getting beat up 100 times a day. I was always smiling, laughing, and would pop up and jump back in. And then that spread like fire into different communities that I'm a part of because the energy I bring. So it was kind of fun.
That's cool. And just illustrates how you show up, right? Like to keep a smile through the beat down. You're like, here we go. That's great. I love it. Okay. So tell us how you think about a bucket list.
Yeah. So I don't have one. And the reason being is I'm trying to live a bucket life. And just going back to the whole Waymaker intentionality thing, it's like, I know definitively that I have life right now. And depending on what I do and how I think, my life can be heaven or hell. And I would much rather have an enjoyable life and do things that are incredible. Earlier you and I were talking, and I have this beautiful view of the mountains, and a bald eagle literally is flying outside of my window. And that is freedom and beauty and life now in such a way that, growing up, I was like, I want to see a bald eagle someday. And now I'm living amongst them. And it just goes to that concept of like, what if we allowed our reality to become a reflection of that which we yearn for and live a bucket life?
I love it. Well, Jon, this has been incredible. I'm sure there's a number of people that want to know, how do I follow up with Jon? Like, I got to get to know him more or bring him in for my team. What's the best way for listeners to reach you?
I would say LinkedIn is great. And the other one is johnmayo.com. Hold the H. There's no H in that. But johnmayo.com will get right to me, as well as LinkedIn. And I'd love to have an exploratory conversation, see how we can help each other.
Jon, thank you so much for joining Gut Plus Science. We could have gone on and on and on so much here. And I am here to do my very best in the summary, my truth you can act on from our conversation around purpose driven impact, particularly leaning into the Waymaker and Strive method. So here's my truth you can act on. Number one, there is no universal blueprint for culture. It is one of those things you got to dive in, understand the people, understand the context and all of the things that help you create that unique blueprint. And it's a lot of work. But the truth is, there's no one way that we can take and copy paste. Number two, deep dive questions that we have prepared and we are constantly building that are in our toolbox as leaders to really understand our people is crucial. And practicing curiosity through those questions is the action that not only helps build relationships with our people, but really gets to the heart of things that matter and finding the best solutions. Number three, leaders are conduits, not solutionists. I mean, some of us feel like we've got all the answers and so many great solutions, and we do have solutions. But when we look at it as we are conduits and we're helping others come together to get to the solution, we are coaching them through that. I love that reminder. Leaders are conduits, not solutionists. Number four, the reminder to repeat a lot. And I have been using this in some change that we are experiencing at People Forward Network right now. And I just need to bring it all the time and continue to repeat and reiterate and share a story. Just keep repeating. Number five, having a common language as a team makes your culture feel special, makes people come together in a deeper, solid way. And it's like, this is how we do things around here. Having that common language for us at People Forward Network, our culture code is so great for that. And finally, number six, Jon, you really made me think about how I discern feedback. And I think it's a great challenge for all of us to think about how we do this well. Food for thought. We get feedback. We're regularly being curious. We're asking for that feedback. And obviously, we can't attack everything, each feedback piece that we get, and having a method for how we discern feedback and then take action as leaders. Gosh, so good. Thanks again, Jon. We'll see y'all next time. We just left the world a little bit better. Now, go do something with it.